Michael Rodriguez, a successful entrepreneur, decided to visit a luxury car dealership on a sunny Saturday. The sun shone brightly in the sky, and he felt it was the perfect day to finally reward himself with the car of his dreams. Dressed in a simple t-shirt, jeans, and worn-out sneakers, Michael wanted to remain unnoticed without drawing attention to his true identity as he entered the dealership. Immediately, he sensed the distrustful glances. Some well-dressed customers eyed him suspiciously, while the employees whispered among themselves. Michael ignored the initial reactions and headed directly to the sports car section, where a particular model had caught his attention. Daniel, the store manager, observed Michael from a distance with a disdainful look. He saw Michael approaching the sleek black sports car and decided to intervene. "Can I help you with something?" Daniel asked, his tone a mix of arrogance and impatience. Michael calmly replied, "Yes, I'm interested in this car. Could you tell me more about it?" Daniel gave Michael a once-over, as if evaluating every piece of his clothing. "This is one of our most expensive models. Perhaps you should look at something more within your budget," Daniel said with a cynical smile. Michael, maintaining his composure, insisted on learning more about the car. Reluctantly, Daniel began to speak about the technical specifications, but it was clear he didn't believe Michael could really afford the car. As Daniel talked, Michael noticed that the stares around him intensified, as if he were an improbable sight in such a luxurious environment. Michael stood firm, not letting Daniel's attitude affect him. He knew who he was and what he had achieved, and this uncomfortable situation was not going to define his worth. Determined to continue, Michael asked about the possibility of a test drive, but Daniel cut off his request with a sarcastic comment. "We usually reserve test drives for serious customers. Maybe you should consider other, more accessible models," he said. Michael's patience was wearing thin, but he still tried to keep calm. "I'm here as a serious customer. I have the full capacity to purchase this car right now. If you could treat me with respect, I'd like to continue the conversation about buying it," Michael said firmly. Realizing that Michael was not going to give up easily, Daniel called a salesperson to take over, but the disdainful attitude remained evident. Michael knew that this situation was far from over, but he was determined to go ahead with his purchase, regardless of the difficulties he encountered along the way. As Daniel walked away, the salesperson, named Anthony, took over. Anthony, young and inexperienced, tried to be professional, but his discomfort was noticeable. He began to describe the sports car with a hesitant voice, avoiding eye contact with Michael. "This model is the latest release from the brand. It has a V8 engine, 600 horsepower, and goes from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in less than 3.5 seconds, Anthony recited. Michael listened attentively, appreciating the car's specifications. However, he noticed that Anthony seemed to be reading from a script, lacking the passion or deep knowledge he expected from someone selling a luxury car. "And what about the entertainment system and safety features?" Michael asked, trying to engage Anthony in the conversation. "Oh, yes," Anthony responded, flipping through a brochure. "It comes with a high-quality sound system, full connectivity, and all the modern safety features like adaptive cruise control, automatic emergency braking, and lane-keeping assistance." While Anthony spoke, Michael observed the other customers and employees in the dealership. They all seemed more interested in him than in the cars. He could feel the hostility and prejudice in the air, but he refused to let it bring him down. He knew that his presence there was a form of resistance, and that he needed to persevere. Noticing that Michael was genuinely interested, Anthony began to relax a bit. "Would you like to take the car for a spin? I can arrange a test drive for you," he said with a slight smile. Michael accepted, satisfied with the change in Anthony's attitude. While they waited for the car, Michael took the opportunity to ask Anthony about the financing process. Anthony explained the available options, still a bit nervous, but starting to feel more comfortable with the situation. Michael realized that despite his inexperience, Anthony was trying to be professional and fair. When the car finally arrived, Michael got in and adjusted the seat. The smell of new leather and the feel of the sophisticated controls made him smile. Anthony sat in the passenger seat, and together they set off for the test drive. The power of the engine and the smoothness of the ride impressed Michael, who felt like a child on Christmas morning. During the drive, Michael and Anthony talked about cars, technology, and life in the city. Anthony began to see Michael beyond the simple clothes, recognizing him as a person with knowledge and passion for cars. Michael, for his part, appreciated the opportunity to get to know Anthony better and to demonstrate that appearance doesn't define someone's character or worth. Back at the dealership, Michael felt more confident about the purchase. "I like the car, Anthony. Let's finalize the deal," Michael said. Anthony smiled, excited about the prospect of a big sale. But before they could proceed, Daniel reappeared, still with a skeptical expression on his face. "I think that's enough, Anthony. The gentleman needs to present documents and prove he can pay for the car," Daniel said, abruptly interrupting. The tension in the air rose again. But Michael knew this was just another obstacle to overcome. Daniel, determined not to allow Michael to proceed without first proving his financial capability, continued to pressure him. "If you really intend to buy this car, you'll need to present proof of income. Our regular clients have no issues with that," Daniel said with an air of superiority. Michael, keeping his cool, pulled out his wallet and presented a metal credit card and some bank documents he always carried for emergencies. "Here are my documents. I hope this is sufficient for you," Michael said, handing the papers to Daniel. Daniel took the documents with a look of distrust and examined them for a moment before taking them to the office. Anthony, still standing beside Michael, seemed embarrassed by the manager's attitude. "I'm very sorry for this, sir. Daniel is always very strict," Anthony said, trying to ease the situation. Michael just smiled, trying to lighten the mood. "It's okay, Anthony. I understand he's doing his job, but I would like to be treated with the same respect as any other customer." While they waited, Michael observed the other customers in the dealership who continued to cast curious glances in his direction. Some whispered among themselves, clearly speculating about the situation. The feeling of being judged solely by his appearance began to weigh on him, but Michael refused to let it show. After a few minutes, Daniel returned with an even more severe look. "Well, it seems the documents are in order, but we still need to verify the credit and make sure everything is correct. That may take some time," Daniel said, clearly trying to discourage Michael. Before Michael could respond, an older customer, visibly uncomfortable with the situation, approached and began to complain. "What's going on here? This man doesn't seem like someone who can buy a car like this. I think it's best if you call the police to check," he said, pointing at Michael. Daniel, seeing an opportunity to press further, agreed with the customer. "Maybe it's a good idea, sir. I'll call the police to make sure everything is in order," he said, reaching for the phone. Michael couldn't believe what was happening. He knew he was being treated unfairly and prejudicially, but he kept his calm, determined not to let it affect him. "Please do what you think is necessary, but know that I'm here as a legitimate customer and have every right to be here," Michael said firmly. Minutes later, 2 police officers arrived at the dealership. They entered and immediately approached Michael, who was sitting and waiting. "We received a report of suspicious behavior. Can you accompany us, sir?" one of the officers said with an authoritative tone. Michael, having no other choice, got up and followed the officers outside the store, with the eyes of the customers and employees following him as if he were a criminal. In the parking lot, the officers asked him to show his documents again and explain what he was doing there. The humiliation was evident, but Michael knew he needed to keep his composure. He calmly explained the whole situation, presenting his documents once again and trying to make the officers understand that he was only there to buy a car. The officers, after listening to Michael's explanation, began to examine his documents. One of them, younger, seemed uncomfortable with the situation. "We'll verify your documents, sir. Please wait a moment," he said, taking the papers to the patrol car. While waiting, Michael felt the weight of humiliation. He knew that his simple appearance had triggered this whole situation and wondered how many others went through something similar every day. He looked around and saw the curious stares of the dealership customers who had come out to see the outcome of the scene. Inside the store, Anthony watched the situation with a worried expression. He didn't know how to help, but he felt that something wasn't right. Daniel, on the other hand, seemed satisfied with how things were unfolding, as if he had proven his point. The officers returned after a few minutes. "Mr. Rodriguez, we've verified your documents, and everything is in order. You can accompany us back into the store," the younger officer said with a more respectful tone. Michael nodded and followed them back inside the dealership. As he entered the store again, Michael felt that the stares were now different. There was a mix of curiosity and embarrassment on the faces of those present. Daniel, realizing that the situation was slipping out of his control, tried to regain command. "Very well, Mr. Rodriguez. Let's continue with the purchase process," he said with a forced smile. Michael looked at the officers and then at Daniel. "I would like to finalize the purchase, but first, I want to ensure that I will be treated with respect from here on out. This situation was unacceptable and should not happen again," Michael said firmly. The officers, still present, nodded in agreement. "Sir, we apologize for the inconvenience. We're just doing our job, but we understand your frustration," the younger officer said. Daniel, now clearly uncomfortable, reluctantly agreed. "Of course, Mr. Rodriguez, we'll make sure everything is handled with the utmost respect and professionalism," he said, trying to smooth things over. Michael, still calm, looked at Anthony. "Anthony, let's continue with the purchase. I appreciate your professionalism and want you to help me finalize this," he said, deciding to give the young salesman a chance. Anthony, relieved, nodded and began preparing the necessary papers for the purchase. Meanwhile, Michael sat down again, feeling exhausted but determined not to let this experience define him. He knew that the battle against prejudice was far from over, but he was willing to face it with his head held high. With the documents prepared, Anthony began to explain the next steps to finalize the purchase. Daniel, still trying to maintain an air of authority, observed from a distance. Michael perceived that despite all the discomfort, Anthony was making an effort to be professional and courteous. "Mr. Rodriguez, we just need your signature on these papers to conclude the transaction. I'll need to verify your credit one last time, but I believe everything will be in order," Anthony said, handing the necessary documents to Michael. Michael signed the papers, feeling increasingly determined to see this situation through to the end. While Anthony finalized the credit verification, Michael looked around and saw that some customers were still watching him, but now with a mix of curiosity and regret for having judged him prematurely. Suddenly, the dealership door opened again, and a man hurriedly entered. It was David, a well-known colleague of Michael's and one of the most respected employees of a large company in the city. He immediately recognized Michael and, with a smile, approached him. "Michael, what a surprise to see you here. Is everything okay?" David asked, noticing the tension in the air. Michael, relieved to see a friendly face, smiled back. "I'm fine, David. I just had some trouble buying a car, but we're resolving it," he responded, trying to downplay the situation. David, sensing something was wrong, turned to Daniel and the officers. "Do you know who you're dealing with?" Michael Rodriguez is one of the most respected and successful entrepreneurs in our city. "This situation is unacceptable," he said with a firm tone. Daniel, now pale, realized that the situation was spiraling out of control. I didn't know, sir. I apologize for the misunderstanding," he stammered. The officers, visibly uncomfortable, also apologized. "Mr. Rodriguez, we didn't know about your position. We apologize for any inconvenience," the younger officer said. Michael, though frustrated by the way he was treated, decided that the best way to handle the situation was to remain calm and use this opportunity to educate. Respect should be for everyone, regardless of position or appearance. "I hope this serves as a lesson," he said firmly. With David's help, the situation was quickly resolved. Anthony, visibly relieved, finalized the transaction and handed the car keys to Michael. "Congratulations on your purchase, Mr. Rodriguez. I hope you enjoy your new car," he said with a sincere smile. Michael thanked him and, as he left the dealership, felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. He knew that this was just an example of a much bigger problem, but he was determined to use his influence to make a difference. He got into his new car, feeling the smoothness of the engine and the comfort of the seats, and drove off, knowing that this experience had changed his life in ways he was just beginning to understand. As he left the dealership, Michael couldn't help but think about the humiliation he had faced and Daniel's prejudiced attitude. He knew that this couldn't be ignored. With David's support, Michael decided it was time to take action to expose the discrimination and do something to change the reality. Upon arriving home, Michael sat at his desk and began to write a detailed account of what had happened, describing every moment from the initial encounter to the police's intervention. His words were sincere and forceful, showing the indignation and determination of someone who wanted to see justice. With the text ready, Michael decided to share his story on social media. He knew that his influence could help spread the message and bring the necessary attention to the problem. "Today, I was treated unfairly and prejudicially while trying to buy a luxury car. No matter how much you've achieved, you can still face prejudice because of your appearance," he wrote, attaching photos of his visit to the dealership. The reaction was swift and powerful. Within hours, Michael's post was shared thousands of times and began to gain traction in the media. Journalists reached out to learn more about the story, and public outrage grew by the minute. The next day, the news was in all the major newspapers and television channels. Michael's story was not just about buying a car, but about the prejudice and discrimination that still permeated society. The dealership quickly became the target of criticism and boycotts, and the management was forced to issue a public apology. "We sincerely apologize to Mr. Michael Rodriguez for the unacceptable treatment he received in our store. We are committed to reviewing our policies and ensuring that all customers are treated with respect and dignity," read the dealership's official statement. Michael, though satisfied with the repercussions, knew this was just the beginning. He began receiving messages of support from people across the country, sharing their own experiences of discrimination. Inspired by these stories, Michael decided to create a foundation dedicated to combating racism and promoting equality. The foundation quickly gained momentum, receiving support from various public figures and the business community. Michael organized events and conferences to raise awareness about racism and the importance of equality. He used his own experience as an example, showing that the fight against prejudice was a daily battle but could be won with determination and unity. Meanwhile, changes began to happen at the dealership. Daniel was suspended and eventually fired for his discriminatory attitude. The store implemented a training program for all employees, focused on equality and respect. Michael's story had triggered a necessary and important transformation. Michael knew there was still much to do, but he was more determined than ever. His experience had become a force for good, and he was ready to continue fighting for a more just and equal world. Michael's story continued to resonate on social media and in the news, but he didn't expect one of the biggest automotive industry entrepreneurs, Richard Manning, to reach out to him. Richard was known for his firm stance against racism and for defending human rights. He contacted Michael, proposing a meeting. On the day of the meeting, Michael was received in Richard's luxurious office. "Michael, your story moved me deeply. I want to help you expand your foundation and take your message even further," Richard said, shaking Michael's hand with a sincere smile. Michael, surprised by the support, expressed his gratitude. "It's an honor to receive your support, Richard. We need all the voices possible for this fight," he replied, feeling a new wave of hope. Richard offered Michael a strategic partnership, suggesting they use his automotive company's influence to promote events, conferences, and awareness campaigns about racism. "We have the resources and visibility. Together, we can make a significant difference," Richard explained. Michael accepted the proposal, and they began planning a national campaign. They decided to organize a series of events in various cities, involving community leaders, celebrities, and influencers. The idea was to create a movement that united people from all walks of life in the fight against racism. As the preparations advanced, Michael and Richard developed a strong friendship. They shared personal stories and discussed strategies to make the campaign even more impactful. Michael felt that he finally had a powerful ally by his side, someone who truly understood the importance of the cause. While the partnership between Michael and Richard gained strength, Daniel, the former manager of the dealership, couldn't accept the way his life had crumbled. He blamed Michael for his dismissal and the negative impact on his career. In an act of desperation and anger, Daniel decided to act. Daniel contacted former colleagues and gathered a group of people willing to harm Michael. They began spreading rumors on social media, questioning Michael's integrity and insinuating that he had exaggerated his story to gain notoriety. The rumors started to gain traction, and some people began to doubt the truth of Michael's story. The pressure was mounting, but Michael was determined not to let it affect him. He knew he needed to face this new wave of attacks with the same courage with which he faced discrimination. Richard, sensing the gravity of the situation, called Michael for an emergency meeting. "Michael, we need to react quickly. We can't let these rumors destroy everything we've built," Richard said, concerned. Michael agreed. "Let's organize a press conference and present all the evidence. We can't allow lies and rumors to tarnish our fight," he responded with determination. At the press conference, Michael and Richard presented documents, testimonies, and recordings that proved the truth of Michael's story. They showed the messages of support from people who had lived through similar situations and reinforced the importance of the fight against racism. Michael spoke from the heart, explaining how discrimination remained a painful reality for many people. "I'm not here to seek revenge. I'm here to seek justice and equality for everyone. This fight is bigger than any of us," he said, emotional. The press conference had an immediate impact. People began to see the truth and support Michael's cause even more. The rumors were quickly debunked, and Michael's reputation was restored. Daniel and his accomplices faced legal consequences for their actions. With the situation resolved, Michael and Richard's campaign gained even more strength. They organized a grand launch event, gathering thousands of people in a stadium. Celebrities, community leaders, and influencers joined to support the cause, creating a powerful and inspiring movement. Michael took the stage and looked out at the crowd. "Today, we are taking a step forward in the fight against racism. Together, we can create a world where everyone is treated with respect and dignity. Thank you for being here and for believing in this cause," he said, his voice full of emotion. The crowd gave a standing ovation, and Michael felt that he was finally making a difference. He knew the journey was just beginning, but with Richard's support and all those people behind him, he was more determined than ever to continue fighting for a better future. After the success of the event, Michael began receiving invitations to speak at various conferences and events across the country. His story of fighting prejudice and his determination to promote equality inspired many. One day, Michael received a surprising offer, an invitation to serve as a counselor for a major international human rights organization. "Michael, your work is inspiring. We want you to join us as a counselor and help us expand our efforts to combat discrimination on a global scale," said Maria Thompson, the organization's president, during a virtual meeting. Michael felt honored by the invitation and accepted with enthusiasm. He knew this was a unique opportunity to bring his message to an even larger audience and make a significant difference worldwide. The partnership with the international organization was a recognition of his work and proof that the fight against racism was gaining momentum. As Michael prepared to take on his new role as a counselor, Daniel continued to conspire in the shadows. He couldn't accept that Michael had come out victorious and decided to resort to more drastic measures. Daniel hired a private detective to investigate Michael's life, hoping to find something that could destroy his reputation once and for all. The detective began following Michael, digging into his past and trying to find any compromising information. However, Michael was a man of integrity, and there was nothing in his past that could be used against him. Frustrated, Daniel decided to fabricate evidence. He planted falsified documents and tried to link Michael to illegal activities, sending this information to the press and the international organization. The news began to spread rapidly, and Michael's reputation was once again put at risk. Maria Thompson, realizing the seriousness of the accusations, contacted Michael. "Michael, we need to investigate these allegations. We can't allow false information to harm your work and our cause," she said, concerned. Michael agreed and hired a team of lawyers and investigators to uncover the truth. He knew he was being targeted by a conspiracy, but he needed proof to expose the culprits. The investigation began, and Michael's team started to unravel the plot. After weeks of investigation, Michael's team discovered that the falsified documents had been planted by Daniel. They found clear evidence of his attempt to defame Michael and linked Daniel directly to the illegal actions. With the evidence in hand, Michael and his lawyers organized a press conference to expose the truth. They presented all the evidence and made it clear that the accusations against Michael were false and the result of a conspiracy. The news spread quickly, and public opinion sided with Michael. Daniel was arrested and faced serious charges for his actions. Michael's reputation was restored once again, and he received a public apology from the international organization and the media. With the truth revealed, Michael was celebrated as a hero. His determination to fight prejudice and his integrity in the face of adversity inspired many. He received awards and honors from various human rights organizations and was invited to speak at international events. At one of these events, Michael shared his vision for the future. The fight against racism and discrimination is a responsibility for all of us. We must work together to create a world where every person is valued for who they are and not for their appearance. The change begins with each of us, he said, emotional. With the support of the international organization and his new allies, Michael decided to expand his foundation. He created educational programs in schools, developed awareness campaigns, and offered legal support to victims of discrimination. The foundation grew rapidly and began making a real difference in people's lives. Michael reflected on his journey and felt deep gratitude for all the people who supported him. He knew that the fight against racism was an ongoing battle, but he was determined to keep fighting. With the support of his foundation, his allies, and the community, Michael was ready to face any challenge that came his way. And so, Michael Rodriguez, the man who was once humiliated while trying to buy a luxury car, became a symbol of resistance and hope. His story inspired millions and showed that with courage and determination, we can transform the world into a more just and equal place.